In the series, Old White Males, I'm Ron, and I'm happy to say that with SURF we have a woman CEO yet, and I've certainly come to appreciate and also recognize that working for a woman CEO is something that I'm getting used to and certainly can learn a lot from. So with that introduction, let me start by saying I'm happy to be here to talk from SURF on an AMS-IX event, because the way we work together and our history have had very close ties. I'm going to talk about for 25 minutes on the areas of innovation that are just happening, things that are on my mind, talking from SURF on a national and international level, talking about digital transformation. And that's what I'm going to cover, so bear with me. If you look on SURF, SURF is a cooperative of about 115 members. We have all MBO, which is vocational educational institutes, who are member of SURF. All HBO institutes, so higher education institutes, but also universities and university medical centers. But next to that, we also have the research institutes that use a lot of data, that need a lot of connection, that need a lot of power, and certainly need a lot of storage. And this is increasing a lot. And looking on scale, on how we can scale up the business in an environment where we may be having less money coming in, looking on political shifts that are taking place, we have a challenge. And I'm going to take you along on what we're doing there. So these are our members. But it's good to mention that AMS-IX 30 years ago started off as a pilot from SURF. I got some emails from people asking them, so how was that? Because we started a pilot looking on international, let's say, connections, and there were two projects that came to mind. One was called Broodje Ham, and the other was called Broodje Kaas, ham sandwich and cheese sandwich. These names were proposed by one of the English members because they sounded so funny. And I think Broodje Ham was about the international connection, the backbone, and making that. And Broodje Kaas was about IPv6 and getting IPv6 up and running in 1994. Now, today, I'm still struggling to get all our member institutes into IPv6. So this is something that's already 30 years happening. And Broodje Ham, Broodje Kaas was something that was there. You see a logo, AMS-IX, M6. So that was supposed to be the logo. I'm happy this one didn't make it. But this is the time, let's say, that things like this were happening. And the mail you see here is actually the mail where it was asked, and it was that Erik Jan Bos asked, now we have to put our projects into the real AMS-IX environment. So in that sense, AMS-IX really gets started. And if you look on the superior technology, how AMS-IX looked at that time, and this is at NICEF, how the international backbone router, IBR LAN, because that was the name for it, looked like this was it. And if you look at the exchange now, it looks a little bit different. So with that, we have a joint background. Looking at SURF, we have three roles to play for our cooperative. We are a services providing organization. We are an association bringing members together across the different sectors, so universities with MBOs, and we can learn from each other in that sense. But we also are an innovation factory, an innovation workplace, where we want to transform a sector. Not only do cool technical stuff, and we do, but we want to do it with a purpose. We want to do it with the purpose that we're actually going to do something with it, that we can create scale, that we can create cooperation between research institutes and educational institutes in the Netherlands. So these are the roles that we play, like organizing research weeks or education days, which are, let's say, pretty good, let's say, crowds that it draws nationally and internationally. Looking at our services, think about purchasing. Before I worked at SURF, I worked at Microsoft. I come from the big tech area, and I moved into the public area. I knew SURF pretty well because it was one of the largest customers of Microsoft. Why? If there's a purchasing power to buy for many institutes and many students, you get, let's say, price discussions that are more interesting. But it's not only about price, it's also about privacy conditions, because that's where the things are really moving into now. So we see that, for example, companies like Zoom or Google, we are talking to them in a, let's say, good way to see if we can change the privacy paragraphs in their contracts. And they are, and they're looking at the Netherlands now to see if it works there. It will probably work in the EU. So the purchasing is one of the services we do. We have the national supercomputer, national networks, I'll talk about that later on as well, and also services like the Security Operations Center of SURF, where you can connect all our members and try to make our sector more secure. This is just a few of the services we deliver. We're also looking on, let's say, networking capabilities and testing that, certainly with CERN, for example, one of the larger research institutes in the border of France and Switzerland. And we just upgraded that to an 800 gigabit line to make sure that the huge amount of data that new instruments we're bringing towards SURF can be directed. So it's not only bandwidth, it's the combination of bandwidth and storage and making sure that the whole system performs, and not only the bandwidth of the network itself. We do run our own fiber cables in the Netherlands, 11,000 kilometers, and we participate in the international networks within GEONT, the European corporate of all the national research and education networks. Looking on innovation of SURF, areas that we work on three different pillars. We work on education, research, and a pillar we call combined, where, for example, network, cybersecurity, but also services around public values, sovereignty. How can we still be in charge of the choices to make instead of, let's say, making sure that your choices are being made by somebody else? In these three pillars, we play on three different levels: local pilots, national level, and international level. And this international level is becoming more and more important, because if you cannot embed the agreements you make in the Netherlands in an international cooperative environment, you may have to do it again, because the EC or international rules may have, let's say, go faster than you have. So in that area, in education, we have all kinds of pilot projects, we have all kinds of programs on a national level to transform education. This is a big program, which is a growth fund program, 500 million in the next years to change education, but also with the European Digital Education Hub to make sure that this is embedded into a European context. The same goes for research, all kinds of projects on the technology level. On a national level, we have a steering group that's looking at open science, so all the science that we are, let's say, producing from a Dutch perspective with our scientists can be used worldwide and make sure that it is open. And there's also an infrastructure committee looking on the future and the decisions on the national supercomputer, on the storage capabilities and the future, and especially how we have to balance the power and compute facilities in the Netherlands towards the scale that we see around us. Exascale systems in Germany, in France, big systems in Finland. How do we make that balance? Do we all jump into the international train, or do we want to have our own, let's say, facility as well to make sure that innovation and knowledge is also maintained within the Netherlands? And this is the balance that we're trying to strike there. There's plenty of international European institutes. We're working more and more with Euro-HPC, but there are others that we work with on the research institutes on a European level as well. And the same is for the last pillar, where we are certainly, as a cybersecurity service providing company, trying to transform our sector from a cybersecurity perspective to get everybody on a CMM level 3, which is not so much a technical question, but it's more like an organizational question. What does it mean? What kind of procedures do you need to have? How do educational institutes know what to do? So using our combined knowledge in that helps. And here, we talk especially with GEONT, the European NREN, to work together on that. And as an NREN, which NREN stands for National Research and Education Network, we make sure that we connect and also make sure that we do that in a way that supports public values. Now, around public values, a lot of things that are going on there. because we see that in educational institutes, the directors find that they're using more and more commercial standards or commercial available methods to teach our students. Can we do that ourselves? Can we change that? So there's a balance between being dependent on other companies to go forward in education. And we see the same in research. Could we still be on the steering wheel? Doesn't mean that everything that other commercial companies are providing. I'm certainly happy on all the discussions we're having with not only big tech, but all commercial companies that are important in driving innovation in the Netherlands. But how can we do that in a balanced way? So this is the portfolio. We also have to look on the future, the longer term, because this is now. So what is the impact of quantum? What's the impact of AI? What is the impact of XR in education? What does it mean for our infrastructure? So these are the things that we are looking at. So this is basically the chessboards that we're playing on. It's like an inchworm and spawn eruption. Because if from an innovation perspective, you're focusing especially on the front end, and you see new opportunities and you go for it, but you don't put enough attention on the back end, het rupsje knapt. The inchworm will break. So we have to make sure that those institutes that may not be as fast get enough attention as well, because otherwise the sector as a whole cannot move forward. Now, if you look on generations and technology, we know that based on the year that you're born in, you're placed in the box, in a generation box. Yeah, so if you're born before 65, you're placed in the baby boom box. If you were born between 65 and 80, you're Generation X. Generation I, the millennial, or the patatgeneratie, that's 1980, 1995. Then 1995 to 2010, that's Generation Z. This is where my kids are from. Then we have 2010 to 2024. We have the current batch cohort that's coming up, Generation Alpha. Important day 2010, because that's the day that the iPad was launched. So instead of a pacifier, the children got an iPad in their hands. So looking at digital knowledge, those children are really at it. And we are preparing for Generation Beta. So, and every generation has a different technology that they look at. I'm Generation X. Baby boom, looking at music, for example, looking at LP, music players, tape even. I'm Generation X, and I'm the Walkman generation. When I was on my bike, I had a Walkman on my head. Generation I, the millennials, are the iPod generation. Generation Z, my kids, are definitely the Spotify generation. The first generation that didn't have to buy music. Why should you buy anything? Then Generation Alpha will be the HomePod generation. You don't even have to make your own playlist. You assume AI knows your mood, and based on that will play what you want to have, even though you don't know it yourself. And Generation Beta, I don't know what it will bring. Looking at all the rings that Samsung and Apple and others are bringing out, it will probably test your heartbeat and the temperature of your blood, and based on that, it will automatically assume something as well. But all these changes in technology couldn't have happened because of important technology inventions that are behind this. For example, the transistor, the most important invention in the 20th century. Yes, it is something to say, but I think it is, perhaps even more than fertilizer. The chip, meaning that you could make, let's say, instruments like a Walkman. The internet and the World Wide Web, those developments made the iPod possible. There's no Spotify without cloud, without AI, no HomePods. And looking on LLM stands for large language models or edge technology. This is what we're really looking at now, because we expect it to have a big impact going forward. So all these generations have their own, let's say, technology background. And one of the jobs that we have at SURF is look ahead and say what might be technologies that are coming at us, or things that are happening worldwide that could have a big impact on education and research in the Netherlands. So if we can prepare and make sure that we can steer it in the right direction. There are three things I want to talk about with you today. Quantum, sovereignty, certainly looking at sea cables and internet, and AI. Looking on quantum, there's a couple of projects that we're really working on, not only on a quantum key distribution, of course, but certainly also on quantum internet. Even though the number of kilometers or miles that we're working on quantum internet together with the TU Delft may not be hundreds of kilometers yet, this may be something that can really change the way how we work with networking and security in networking. So having the knowledge here, perhaps not having the solution yet, but being part of the innovation consortia that are looking at it will bring us the knowledge to at least know what's going on. And we're certainly working on quantum computing. Again, with quantum delta. We have applied for an Euro HPC a quantum computer to put next to our supercomputer in Amsterdam. We hope we will get it. We will hear it in the next 3 weeks. So that will mean that next to our national supercomputer will be a quantum computer for research purposes. And we have to figure out how to get to 0 Kelvin, etc. I'm doing that in the data center. But it's not because of quantum, it's because of the connection between HPC, high-performance computing, and quantum, because it's about connecting different technologies that we are really interested in. So this is what's happening on quantum. If we're not involved here, and if Russia can have a quantum computer that can automatically solve, let's say, the passwords we have, we may have a problem. So we have to be in that technology, we think. On sovereignty, and looking on... Oh, one moment. I have to go back this way. Yes. No. I'm learning. On sovereignty, and you're looking on the number of sea cables being laid from the 90s to now, you could say that together with AMS-IX and SURF and NICEF and UvA, we were one of the first to land sea cables in the Netherlands. Basically bringing internet into Europe. And we invested a lot in the 90s, but also early 2000s in Gigaport, how the area around Amsterdam, let's say, was really, got very good connections, new sea cables, but now 20 years later, we see that our international position is, let's say, not as strong as it used to be. So that means that together with AMS-IX, we're making sure this case is being presented to the Ministry of Economic Affairs. Because if all new cables come to Portugal or come to Norway or come to Ireland without, let's say, going through the Netherlands, our role, certainly from a SURF perspective, as an international data broker for research, is coming under pressure. So we need to make sure that we can play this role. If we're not proactively investing in this area, we may lose our position. And if that is the case, if you don't have the connection, you don't have the data. And if you don't have the data, you don't need to compute. And if that doesn't happen, but still, when every PhD student that comes to the Netherlands that wants to do compute, the first question they ask is, how many GPUs do you have? And if the answer is, well, we don't, they may move to Finland or to other countries because there they have the flexible resources to do their specific research. Internet and sea cables is certainly an area that we're working on. But one of the things that's occupying my mind the most is, I'm pressing the wrong button again, is AI. Because it is changing a lot. And it's already in the classroom, it's already in the research, we don't have the rules yet, so how to move ahead with that. Why? Even without ChatGPT 5, for the first time in history, we have machines that can pass the Turing test. Who was Turing? Alan Turing. He broke codes in the Second World War, but he also developed a test in the 30s of last century, saying, if you are interacting and you don't know with something, either a human or a machine, and you cannot make a distinction whether it's a human or a machine, if that is the case, that machine will pass the Turing test. And up until now, if you're using Siri or Cortana or whatever, they make a lot of mistakes. So you know, the current AI in Apple or Google may not still be passing the Turing test, but with the new large language model developments, this is certainly happening. So that means we have to move ahead. And even though the AI is not new, already in the 60s we had the first AI chatbots. In 97 we had Deep Blue defeating Kasparov in chess. Google started in 97 searching. It took 20 years, the AI cold period, to get a new feat. That meant that computers were smarter at Go, the most difficult game to beat. And currently we see with ChatGPT that they pass the most important exams, among which the sommelier exam. And this is one of the exams I want to pass as well, so I have to learn from GPT. So you could say this is a hype. 2 years ago we had blockchain, then we had immersive technology, now it's AI. But all institutes that are part of SURF are already seeing that things are happening. In the classroom, AI is present. All students are using it. If you're asking for, let's say, terms and papers, come up with a paper on Napoleon, they all expect it to be GPT-made. So you have to be specific, and you have to help teachers and students how to work with AI models. Don't ask, give me a paper on Napoleon, give me a paper on what you think of Napoleon. Or even better, the exam question could be, put this question in ChatGPT. Yeah? What is the best thing that Napoleon did? What did you think about that? What is the answer? Is it correct? Do you agree with that? So you have to learn that children can interact with language models and AI. Now, in talking about AI, there's a lot of terms, and I won't be making it too technical, but AI is certainly a software. Artificial intelligence is software that can answer your questions. Machine learning is artificial intelligence that can learn by practicing. Then you have deep learning, that is machine learning, that can practice by using neural networks like your brain. Then we have generative AI, that is deep learning, that can create text. Why generative? They can generate text, music, video, and images. Then we have generative pre-trained transformers, or GPT, which is generative AI that can use faster even by using a transformer technology. So you can learn in parallel instead of serially. So they can be very generative. And finally, looking on foundation models or large language models, they are GPT models that are trained by huge amounts of data. And with that, you can get questions on passing Turing tests, and that can be done by chatbots in very different ways. We use Mistral, but there are different ways. We used others before that. We used Llama before that. Now, looking on AI and GPT and going forward, there's new things happening on it. It's not only asking questions and getting answers. There's large actions models coming our way, which means that you don't type with your mobile phone anymore, but just talk to it. And you say, book me a taxi. Fill in my tax reports. So it's a sequence of actions that the AI knows what the outcome of the first action is, so it can take us as an input of the next action. So this is developments that are happening, and we try to make sure that we follow this. And this is something that could have a big impact on education and certainly also on research in the world. Now, looking on the dominant players in the GPT market, of course, it's big tech and China. China certainly is the biggest player. If we look at the Beijing Academy of Artificial Intelligence, they have the largest models. I also say by privacy sometimes. But the Chinese players are the biggest players. Looking on Google, Microsoft, etc., and others, they're coming up. And these are the development of GPT models. There are many, many models. Now, of course, if you look at what we already were used to, Googling pages, you can always filter, if you Google, what kind of pages you get first, and if you trust that website or not. But with GPT, you don't know what the background of that information is. So that means it's kind of tricky. Can you trust what is it true or not? You cannot really judge what the quality of the information is that you're getting. So for Google, something certainly is happening, and it's good to have that discussion with Google, and we certainly do. So they produced a report saying that about 26% of all the jobs in the Netherlands will probably not be impacted on AI. 7% will probably disappear, and 67%, so 2/3 of jobs, will certainly have a big impact with AI. So we have to make sure that we invest in that. Now, looking on bias of American models, because we're certainly not going to use the Chinese, how does the world look like from those GPT perspective? This is a bit what the world is looking like. What does this mean for culture? So we have this discussion with our ACP Cultural Plan Bureau. So if more and more students are using American language models that may not be trained on Dutch heritage, the Dutch culture, Papiaments and Fries, by the way, as well, in there. So what does it mean for the outcomes we'll be getting? So we think it's important to make sure that, that this is addressed. Also knowing that AI and generative AI, this is a generated picture, makes mistakes. If you look on the number of fingers of the lady, you see that AI is not always able to count to 5. So we started from SURF in 2023 with a Band-Aid pilot to build our own Dutch-based foundation model, using Llama at the time, to make sure that we didn't do PowerPoints on it, but did demos. Yeah, so we talked with the Ministry of Internal Affairs, with the Ministry of Economic Affairs, also with our own educational ministry, to see what is happening. So what could we do? Why is this important? Can it pass the Bassi and Adriaan test? The Bassi and Adriaan test, because every Dutch person knows who the friend of Bassi is. That's Adriaan. Because it's a Dutch television series, but looking on foreign language models cannot pass the Bassi and Adriaan test. I've checked it. Up until now, 4.0 ChatGPT does pass the Bassi and Adriaan test. When I ask what the importance is, what, for example, the capital of Northern Holland is, often I get Amsterdam. So it's still that we have to get used to getting mistakes. There are 2 separate things that we're working on now. Now in 2024, together with TNO and the National Forensic Institute, we're working on GPT-NL, where we're learning how to build a Dutch-based foundation model. The challenge is not so much technology, because we think, even though we are not spending billions in it, this is a $25 million project, we're not spending billions, but technology is not the issue. We use our national supercomputer to train it. The issue is legal and ethical questions. Because if all other GPT models are scraping websites to get their number of parameters, we need 300 billion parameters to get a good model, without, let's say, getting into a loss of copyright, I cannot get to that number of parameters. So we have to make sure, so what is the legal implication of doing that? Because we want to do it the right way. We want to be transparent on how we get to it. So this is what we're learning and what the results are. And the last thing we're doing now is, together with the ministries, looking at the pros and cons of having an AI data center, an AI factory in the Netherlands. A large data center where the Netherlands can be a key player in the European landscape on AI. So this is not Snellius or the supercomputer. This is a exascale-like system that we're going to use to train and run data models. Now, this is not a done deal. We're in the process of getting to that in the next year. There's a lot of stages still to be made, but together with some ministries, we're trying to get there. Now, and by the way, again, this is not a technology thing. In the end, why do we want to do that? Is get to data sets. Because data sets that we can use to retrain large language models in the future, that's where the goal is. It's in data. And the second goal is in getting new innovation consortia, so we can learn from. So these are the things that we're really driving. Not necessarily the model itself, because it will be outdated in 6 months anyway. And that's why we're doing pilots with AMS-IX, like AMDEX, the Amsterdam Data Exchange as well. Because we need notary functions to see what data set can go from A to B and how to use that going forward. In looking at AMS-IX in the last 30 years, I want to congratulate AMS-IX on their success. Because looking at it from broodje ham and broodje kaas to all the international, let's say, facilities, for example, here in Thailand this year, but whether it's North America, Middle East, Far East, AMS-IX is everywhere. I think it's made a huge journey, and I hope that SURF and AMS-IX, on our combined way forward to bring good technology offerings that can help the world and improve the world, that we can continue to work on our joint missions together. Thank you for your time. Yeah.
No,